Okay, so now perhaps we can begin. So firstly, we have our OCRE project director, David Haynes from Jayan, who will be giving us an overview of the project. David Haynes, the floor is yours.
Right, good morning, everyone. I thank you for your interest in the OCRE project. Rob, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you for your interest in the OCRE project. I'm Dave Haynes. I am the project director on OCRE, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the OCRE project ambitions, what we're currently up to, what we are hoping to accomplish, some of the motivations behind the OCRE project. And then my colleague Jan Meyer will take you through this, the first of our cloud funding calls, and with some instructions on what kind of projects we're looking for, how to put a project proposal in, and kind of timeline and stuff like that. But I'll talk a little bit about OCRE in a nutshell. So our ambitions as a project are based on the fact that Europe is the largest producer of research data in the world, and the Commission wants to increase the use of this data and interconnect research IT infrastructures through the European Open Science Cloud. So OCRE is an EOSC project, but we intend to provide researchers with access to commercial cloud and digital services. And in providing access, we want the research community to be able to easily consume these services in terms of procurements and funding. And then we want to drive the adoption of such services and stimulate the European digital economy. So why is it so important to the OCRE project to get the research community up and running on commercial digital services? Well, we believe that these services promote agility in your local research activities. You're able to harness advanced analytics, machine learning platforms, artificial intelligence, and these platforms we all believe can not only make your research activities more agile, but can significantly improve your research outcomes. To support collaboration, both regional and global, if you are working on a project and you're collaborating across the region, or even with somebody in the US, it's far easier, obviously, to consume workloads off of cloud, public cloud, than to actually, for you both to be consuming on-premise workloads. To drive the broader EOSC ambitions in terms of open research, fair data, and the stimulation of the smaller suppliers, those are all ambitions of ours. And I will talk a little bit more about fair data in a subsequent slide as well. To stimulate the European digital economy focused on the research community, to grow emerging Earth observation digital solutions off of the DIAS platforms, consuming the Copernicus data, and the Sentinel program. And I'll talk a little bit about the fact that OCRE not only has this cloud call and cloud and digital services, but we also have a focus on a proof of concept for driving discipline-focused services, which we are kind of running as a separate stream. And then to provide for the acquisition and service discovery. Each of the suppliers that will be on the OCRE frameworks will be onboarded onto the EOSC hub and catalogued as such. The benefits to the research community from our perspective, we believe that these cloud and digital services will be validated. We've done a lot of research in terms of your requirements of cloud and digital services, and we have run our procurements to select suppliers that actually meet those requirements. These suppliers have check boxes in terms of data privacy, GDPR. They can build the way we need them to build. They provide technical support, special pricing for research in country, and they check the boxes in terms of various ISO standards. We integrate with the European Open Science Cloud. As I said, we will be using the Hub and EOSC Future to catalog these services. There will be ready-to-use agreements for the institutes in country, and we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. The institutes will be able to apply for European Commission adoption funding available through the project, and here we're talking about the first of our cloud funding calls. And we do have a discipline-focused POC for researchers that do consume Earth observation services. But we are running that as a separate stream. Right, what does the cloud and digital services tender look like, or procurement look like, the resultant framework? So what we elected to do was to look to suppliers that could provide these services with feet on the ground support in each of the country, and provide the best possible support to the researcher in terms of having local presence, local language. So we've divided the procurement up into 40 lots, and Jan will talk a little bit about who these participant countries and national research and education networks are. But in each country, you will have a number of suppliers. There will be one supplier representing each of the original infrastructure platforms. So we're very excited that there are many, many European platforms looking to be listed on our frameworks. But if, for example, you're looking for hyperscale services through Amazon, Microsoft, Google, or any of the other bigger hyperscale platforms, there will only be one reseller of those services in your country. So we're looking to develop a really good relationship between the suppliers of cloud services in the country and the research community. We're looking to build that relationship so that you are better supported. If you have a look across to the right, Géant will be a centralized procuring entity and will be eligible to procure across all 40 lots. Each of the national research and education networks will be able to procure in their country, and all the institutes will be able to procure in their countries on behalf of their researchers. So we're looking at 40 countries, about 10,000 institutes as eligible to procure. Okay, the impact targets. So the kinds of projects that we would like to see put forward in project proposals for funding for digital services need to be intent on consuming cloud and digital services to accelerate their research outcomes. They need to be projects that are able to demonstrate the impact of these services in terms of their outputs and agility. So if your project is going to be able to demonstrate how cloud and digital services really assisted in terms of the agility of your research activities and your research outputs, then they are of interest to the OCRE project, and I'll explain why. Projects that would, without the OCRE funding, would not be using these tools, certainly to any great extent. We want to hear from those projects. Projects that provide or hope to provide significant relevance in terms of their research discipline. So we want projects that will attract attention. If we create a case study based on your project, we want it to be a compelling case study. We want it to be fascinating. We want to understand why the benefits of the cloud and digital services were as such. So we're looking for projects that will provide for great case studies. You need to form part of the broader European research community. You need to hope to support further research and collaboration through your project. You need to look to begin consuming these services at year-end 2020. At this point, the OCRE frameworks will be in place and suppliers will be contracted in your countries. And we'd also like you to look for identifying opportunities for the hosting of fair data. Fair data essentially suggests that your research data, so not necessarily your published outcomes and outputs, but the research data you used during your project can be made reusable if it would benefit further future projects in your research discipline. And this does require the standardization of metadata. It does require hosting of fair data. And this is something that the OCRE project is looking to support wherever they can. The first call is published today, September the 15th. At the end of business today, there will be a link on the OCRE website to a form on the Negometrics procurement platform, which we're actually using to kind of manage this call. And you will all be notified based on your registration for this webinar. You'll be notified that the link goes live, and the link will then be distributed through the various OCRE channels within the European research community. We focused on project submissions by individual institutes, where we will provide 100% funding, and Jan will talk a little bit about this. You need to meet the impact targets as described earlier. We'd like this call to reach broadly in terms of reach, discipline, and location. Any decisions that we make, as the impact targets have been, will be signed off by the OCRE External Advisory Board. They're external to the project. They work pro bono, and they provide a lot of transparency in terms of our activities. This call will be socialized across all channels. As I said, it will provide a precedent for future calls, and the first call will exclude opportunities for the buyer groups. Okay, and then just, this is my final slide, just the role of GÉANT and the National Research and Education Networks. We do want to provide the best possible support for the research community. We are listing suppliers in country. The NRENs are able to provide the institutes with call-off agreements, but they also would be able to procure on your behalf if they are going to be acting as a buyer group. They will catalog the cloud and digital services, as will the EOSC Hub. They will help you broker relationships with the market if you need that support. They'll provide call-off agreements. They will support local cloud forums. So they will assist the market in providing training, in providing webinars, in really helping the research community benefit from these services. They will procure on behalf of the community, as I said, if they're acting as an underwriter or a buyer group, but otherwise the institutes will procure directly through these contracts. They will evangelize the service in these services in their annual conferences through webinars, and they will host agreed upon supply engagements. They are one of the channels that we have for communicating these funding calls, this funding call, for example, and they will provide support to any local buyer groups. Okay, so in a nutshell, that is OCRE, and Jan will kind of take it one step further. This is our external advisory board, but visit the OCRE project website where you can actually link through to the advisory board page, and you'll see a brief biography on each of these people. And that is all for me. Sorry, I took up a little bit more of your time than I anticipated, but this is me.
Thank you very much, David. Now we have Jan Meyer, who will speak about the adoption funding specifics in the first call. Jan, over to you.
That was unmute. And now I just have to switch. Right. There we go. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jan Meyer. I work for Norwegian NREN Uninet, and I'm in charge of the adoption funding activity in the OCRE project. So this is the webinar for the first OCRE call for projects for the use for adoption of infrastructure, cloud, and research, which we shorthand to the first cloud call. 3 objectives in OCRE. It will establish procurement vehicles, and following the establishment of those, 3 funding waves will then target the research community to stimulate the adoption of those services. And through these activities, OCRE will develop the capability for procuring and brokering commercial services in the EOSC. very briefly summarized, Dave's already mentioned a lot of it, the IAS framework agreements, because that's the thing that we hope that you'll then adopt. So they'll be available in 39 countries through the NRENs and EOSC. And as Dave mentioned, there's going to be one lot per country, which for your practical purposes means that you'll have a different mix of suppliers per country. It's available to all NREN member institutions in the green countries, plus one particular institution in Slovenia. The scope of these framework agreements, so what you can actually buy on them, is it's going to be, the core is going to be around infrastructure as a service. That's a hard requirement. And on top of that, then the different suppliers can offer various types of platform as a service, software as a service, and their marketplace. And it obviously depends on the suppliers that we're talking about, how rich their portfolio is. You have those that only offer IaaS. You have those that offer a bit of IaaS plus some very specific services on top of that. And then you have the very rich portfolios of the big hyperscalers. In addition to that, these suppliers can offer consulting services that typically have to do with the consumption of their core service offering. The intended result, and I can't go into specifics because we're very busy evaluating this, evaluating the procurement, but the intended result is we'll have ready-to-use framework agreements with a rich portfolio of suppliers and services, including the well-known hyperscalers through resellers and several other European players. And the span of services that we hope that the entire portfolio covers goes from basic IaaS in multiple flavors to machine learning, data analysis, and whatever you could conceivably need from those portfolios. So closer looking at the adoption funding now, I'll first take you quickly through the process and then look at what we actually want you to tell us in your application. There's 2 calls that we're working on at the moment. Current call that we're having this webinar for is the first infrastructure cloud services adoption call, which opens today and has an application deadline of the 31st of October. Pretty soon, the first Earth observation services call will open as well. And that's the last I will say about that. So in order to stimulate adoption of OCRE's portfolio of services, right, which consists of 2 service types, infrastructure cloud services, Earth observation services, OCRE has a pot of money, the OCRE adoption funds. And these are split equally between the 2 service types, and they come in 3 different waves, with a wave 1 targeting individual researchers, a wave 2 research projects at individual institutions, and a wave 3 research projects at groups of institutions represented by a lead organization. And this current webinar is only about wave 2, research projects at individual institutions, for the consumption of infrastructure cloud services. And you can see that we have a total budget available of 1 million euros, of which we intend to use a chunk in the first call. Now, as Dave mentioned, OCRE has an external advisory board, and I'll very briefly mention it, which advises on the strategy and targeting of these adoption funding calls, where the overarching goal is most impact for the adoption euro. In addition, they provide us with oversight of funding allocation. So they are there, I could summarize it as keeping us honest, basically to ensure that we have an allocation that is balanced, fair, transparent, and non-discriminatory. The slides will be available after the webinar, so you can have a look at the members of this external advisory board, but suffice it to say that we were striving to get a good representation from the community and the various angles in which you can view the community. To the adoption funding call process, and for this I'll switch on the laser pointer. There we go. So looking at it from your point of view, once a call is prepared, to which this external advisory board advises, and it opens, you prepare your project proposal, you submit it, OCRE does the evaluation with oversight provided by this external advisory board. Out of this evaluation process come a number of selected projects. OCRE will then sit down with each selected project to assist in specifying functional requirements, which are then used to purchase the services needed. That purchase process then results in one or more suppliers that stand for the service delivery to the project. OCRE ensures payment of the suppliers, and out of the project, we then hope, obviously, that two particular outcomes will occur. One is the research outcome that you're striving for. One is the showcase that OCRE is striving for. And obviously, we hope that through the adoption, through this adoption project, that you'll continue to use these types of services. So that's the process. And I can switch off the pointer now. And now let's look closer at what are we looking for. So our current funding strategy is that we're aiming for bigger research relevant projects that really show the research community, the wider research community, how this portfolio of services that OCRE has can help to achieve great research outcomes. So that could be new outcomes which are enabled by services. It could be improved execution of your project in terms of using less time, using less money, improving the quality of your results. It could be using these services as an impact amplifier. We're guessing that these services ought to allow nimble groups to do larger undertakings that before might have only been beholden to larger institutions due to the supporting infrastructure that you need. We're also imagining that you could, with nimble budgets, achieve great things in a way that you couldn't do before. There's probably many other improvements that you could make. So that's what we're looking for. So inspiring showcases, case studies which inspire other researchers to adopt infrastructure cloud services for their research. That's the overarching goal we have. So who's eligible and what can the OCRE funding be used for? I haven't mentioned that before. The eligible institutions are all the member institutions of NRENS in the green countries. So that's all 39 countries in which institutions can use the OCRE IAS Plus framework agreements. And the funding is intended for purchases from the OCRE IAS framework agreements. So that's 100% funded. Primarily infrastructure cloud services, anything that you can get from the catalog of these service providers. And in addition, consulting services in support of using these services, which by and large would be in the area of assisting with onboarding, architecting service use, that type of stuff. What is not covered by the OCRE funding is your project's person hours. So you have to do the work yourself. And we do realize that that has a consequence for the type of projects that we can expect will submit a proposal. In case you're considering submitting a proposal from the Netherlands, please contact the OCRE team because it has a little bit of a special situation regarding consulting services, but also how the infrastructure cloud services are delivered to the institutions. So when you're writing your application, what we want to know is obviously a short description of a research project. This is where I wrote, you can explain why your project is worthwhile and capable of becoming a showcase. This is where we want you to sell us your project. Why is your project interesting and how will it contribute to becoming that showcase that we're after? The second really important point is how will these commercial cloud services from the OCRE portfolio support you in your activities to improve your research outcomes? And how do they improve your research outcomes? That includes what services do you intend to use and the impact that you then hope to achieve with those. Naturally, we'll ask for your ability to execute and your ability to use the resources in a short time. We have a couple of funding tiers. However, if you do have a fantastic idea outside of these tiers, do apply. It's not like we want you to use at least 50,000 euros. No, if you come up with a fantastic idea that uses a lot less, then by all means. The same goes if you have a fantastic idea that uses a bit more. Our priorities when evaluating your proposals will primarily look for the showcase effect, both of your research and of the impact of the OCRE services on your research or on the execution of your research project. We'll also look at your ability to actually use the services and achieve the desired impact on your research within a short time. So we're talking about months and not years, and ability to start very early next year. Obviously, your ability to execute, and naturally, we're going to be looking at whether you're eligible or not. For those projects that are then awarded with OCRE adoption funding, our intent is to leverage that for you to develop a relationship with a supplier in your country. So where possible, we intend that your institution will buy the services through the OCRE framework agreement, that your institution will do that and not we. However, we will assist with this purchase process, in particular in terms of the requirement specification and the mechanics of the procurement compliant call-off procedure. That means that we'll sit down with you and help you do the actual purchase and procurement. OCRE will pay for the services. What we expect you to do is help us create the showcase. And that could take the form of helping us create a podcast, interview, a written document. We do the work, but obviously we need your input. A quick look ahead at the February next year Wave 2 and Wave 3 call. You might recall that we have different adoption waves. The Wave 2 is for research projects by individual institutions. Wave 3 is for groups of institutions represented by a lead. And what we're hoping to achieve there is the establishment of the lead applicants as permanent adoption amplifiers, because we're guessing that there are some shared services constructs that might be interested in doing that. So the planning ahead, we're now at the 15th of September and the first call opens. This call closes at the 31st of October. By the end of November, we'll be done evaluating, and early December, we expect to be able to let you know whether a proposal got accepted or rejected, at which time we then want to engage in contracts with the awarded projects. And in January, we would like to start procuring the services that are required for the execution of those projects. The next cloud call opens on the 16th of February, closes 6 weeks later, and the award process is then immediately following up on that. The third and last call opens in July. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, please ask them now in the Q&A or drop us an email on this email address.
Thank you very much, Jan. Okay, now the floor is open to any questions. I invite you to please raise your hand if you have any question. We'll unmute you and provide you the floor. So we have our first question from Vasiliev. You are now able to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please introduce yourself and your organization.
My name is Vasil. I'm head of the Cybersecurity Research Center of London Metropolitan University, but I'm also acting as a consulting researcher for the GATE Institute in Sofia, in Bulgaria.
Okay.
So I'm wearing two hats here. My first question is related to what Jan just told us about the costs. Since the development costs are not covered, what the costs cover, apart from paying for services, what else?
It covers exactly that, payment of services and professional services from the supplier needed to consume those services.
So just remember that our ambition as a project is to drive the adoption of digital services in support of research. So we're not actually paying for research, we're paying for digital services in support of those research activities and outcomes.
So this means that only existing services fit within the scope of this project. There will be no new services, just existing services.
The adoption funding in OCRE is meant for the use of the services that you can buy from commercial providers. So there is no services development as such, none, right? And we assume that, so the underlying assumption here is that the commercial services that you can buy from the likes of Microsoft or Amazon or Google, that they offer your research project such good benefits in either your project execution or for your research outcomes, that you have a self-interest in using them, right?
Okay, thank you. Just to be absolutely sure that I understand it, I will try to give an example, and you will tell me if I'm right. Say we have a project for developing a certain services, and during the development we intend to use DevOps approach, so we need to subscribe to Amazon AWS, and you will pay for this if this project fits.
Yes, I mean, if you're consuming standardized cloud and digital services from Amazon, if you're consuming any of the related platform and software services that are listed on the OCRE procurement, and if you are consuming any of your Amazon resellers consulting services in country, then the project would pay for that if your project was in fact awarded.
But the project needs to exist. The project needs to need these services, and we have to apply for you to pay for those services.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Clear. Thank you very much.
Rob, you muted.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay, thank you very much, Vasil. Next, we have Björn Backberg. I am now giving you the floor. Please introduce yourself and state your question.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Björn. I'm from Deltaris in the Netherlands. I have a question related, following up from the previous question, was do you consider the technology readiness levels as important when you apply for example, cloud resources for a research project?
So as we said earlier, the OCRE project is focused on two streams. The first is commercial commodity cloud services, with some related platform and software services. So that's a very mature market, and those services are very mature. I mean, if you were consuming from a Cloud Sigma or one of the hyperscale resellers or whatever the services you were selling, now a lot of those platforms have marketplaces where there are solutions that are probably less mature, but probably still available through the OCRE procurement frameworks. And the OCRE cloud procurement framework, cloud and digital services, with a little bit of PaaS and a little bit of SaaS, that will only be finalized in December. So we're currently scoring a massive tender. And once we've scored the tender and we've awarded contracts in each of the countries, then the framework will be published and accessible. So that is a very mature market, and those are services that are mature. What we're trying to do in the stimulation of Earth observation services is actually get researchers that are wanting specific services that are not necessarily yet available to be developed. But that is a separate funding wave, and that does focus on the consumption of Earth observation related services.
Okay.
Can I ask a counter question?
Jan, before, can I just maybe rephrase my question slightly? So thanks, Dave, for that explanation. So what I'm after is, if I have an exploratory research project, which is, for argument's sake, doesn't have a very high TRL, can I still, within the context of that research project, apply for resources from OCRE, even if my research project is doesn't have a very high TRL, but has the potential to demonstrate impact?
I kind of figured that was the actual question that you wanted to ask. I realized, there's two ways to frame that. I can't consider that would be a factor. What we're after is we're after research that makes an impact, right? So relevant, meaningful research that's relevant within your discipline. But we're not judging the research as such, because we can't.
Okay.
Right? Someone else has already done that. And what we then want to know is, right, so your use of the OCRE services, does that somehow contribute in a great way to your research execution or your research outcomes? That's the idea. So this could be, I mean, if you're doing fundamental research on graviton particles, so I can finally get my flying car, right? That's very non-technology readiness level. It would be very eye-catching. Right?
Yeah.
If you're doing the number 10,000 analysis of how many angels can I fit on the top of a pin, unless you find the answer, right?
Okay. So technology readiness level for the research itself is not important. It's how sexy the project is, basically.
Yeah, and how you intend to use the OCRE services.
Yes, and then demonstrate how valuable the OCRE services are, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Great.
And we can't really say sexy, a sexy project in the application form, but it's exactly what we're looking for. Something that if someone else picks up the use case, they're like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, and they do that, right? That means that I can also do something like that. That's what we're after.
Transferable technologies. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for that.
Right. Thank you very much, Björn. Are there any other questions from the audience? Okay, we have a question from Anthony Perez. You are now unmuted.
Yeah, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Hello, Anthony. I think you were cut off.
yes, sorry, it went away, the mute.
Oh, okay.
It's back. Yeah, I am IT systems head from the Alba Synchrotron in Barcelona, and we are already using the GEANT framework, which precedes this OCRE, and we are already working with Amazon. And I'm sorry because it's not directly probably related with the subject of the meeting, but we are really worried about this transition because this old framework is ending, and we assume that the new framework that we have to go is OCRE. We are archiving our data. We are starting to archive our data in the cloud through this project, but of course we want a seamless transition. And I don't know if you could give us some guidance so that we are sure that, because we are not even sure that we can extend the previous contract. So I don't know if. Of course, we could also try to apply for these funds, etc. But we would just to make the transition with funds or without funds to the new framework.
So you're right that's not really a question that was necessarily of interest to this forum, but just to answer your question quickly, is through Redder.
Yes.
So the framework contracts will be made available for the new suppliers on the OCRE framework, and they may well be the same providers that you're using currently. Who knows what the outcome of this procurement will tell us, but they could be the same providers. But it doesn't really make any difference, because if you sign a contract with a provider under a framework, you sign a contract for a period of time, and that's between you and the provider. And when that contract ends, and it needs renewing, you can either do it through the same hyperscale reseller or a new hyperscale reseller that is on a framework, if you want the framework benefits to apply. And the hyperscale resellers have made a commitment to the hyperscaler, Amazon, for example, in your case, to actually provide for the transition of the workload. So there's no, I mean, it's just at the time of procurement, you're using the framework to get the benefits of the framework and the special pricing and the special support and all of that kind of stuff. But once the procurement's been made, you then enter into a contract with that provider. And you can change providers at the end of that contract very easily. So it's not, there should be nothing threatening about a framework ending and a new framework beginning, because at any point in time, you're going to be engaging with suppliers on the framework.
Okay, what I'm concerned is this period, these months that we are now, because the old framework ends in this year, in 2020, December, and the new one you're saying will be available from February 2021. So no, as I understand, no, sorry.
The new framework will be available in December this year for that reason. But as I said, it shouldn't make any difference because you're currently consuming through a contract with the supplier. And when that's up for renewal, you'll renegotiate a contract through a new framework. So there's no, I don't think there's any reason for concern.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And my advice would be to contact the Gadiris to get more details on this and follow the process.
Yeah, we are in contact with them.
Yep.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you very much, Anthony. Next, we have Emmanuel Mondon, who has a question. Emmanuel, the floor is now yours.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Do you hear me?
Yes.
So Emmanuel Mondon, working for Maxar, a potential supplier of Earth observation services. It's rather a comment than a question. I'd like to make it very clear to everybody, when you are looking for projects to support, you are calling projects from research and education public entities and not private companies, right?
Yeah, so as I said in the chat, and as Jan mentioned in his presentation, your institute will be a member of the local national research and education network, which covers the 10,000 institutes, which covers all the public entities that have been listed to procure. So chances are your public institute will be a member and you will be eligible to procure. If you're a private entity or a private organization, you won't be a member of the NREN, correct?
Yeah, it's a bit mix and match in the different countries, but it generally boils down to the not-for-profit research sector in that particular country. And that usually covers all the universities, everything else that does education and research, but also all the research institutes, and depending on the country, a good chunk of government organizations. Okay,
so it's not really public or private, it's already belonging to one NREN or not?
Yeah.
That's the prerequisite, to be part of one NREN.
That's a prerequisite to procure off of these frameworks. The NREN's listed their entities, a whole cohort of other entities registered their own interest, and we did a lot of analysis and found out that they were all members of the local NREN anyway. And that speaks to like really big research organizations like CERN and ESA, and all of these institutes tend to have membership with the current research education network based on bandwidth consumption back in the day. So,
okay, no, very clear. Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Okay, next we have Alexander Lepitovich. You're now given the floor. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So I'm Alexander Yakutovich from EPFL Lausanne, Switzerland. I'm a postdoc and I'm a developer of IDLab platform. And my question essentially is related to what we are doing. So let me just briefly introduce what the platform is, and then I'll come to the question. So we are developing a platform that allows experimentally, so the people who are not doing simulation in daily life, to actually have a nice, easy web interface that allows to run calculations. So as you can see, I mean, for that platform, we don't have a clear scientific project in mind. But what we would like to offer is to wide range of scientists who don't have access to the simulation to actually do the simulation. And I would like to know if whether this OCRE funding is can be applied for our project, because what we would like to build is like to create a service that I don't know everyone from Europe, for instance, can access and run simulations to this through this platform. So. And
sorry, you're associated with which institute?
EPFL, Lausanne, École Polytechnique de Lausanne.
Okay, sorry, right. Well, I think if you actually present a project proposal, and the outcomes, are really interesting, and you describe, how you're using algorithms to, and what the intended outcomes are and the benefits to the broader community. We did suggest in our presentations that if the research you're doing and the output of your research, even if the output is a technology platform, if that is supportive of research within your discipline, or, if it makes for a compelling case study, and you are consuming as through a public research institute, then we would certainly consider that proposal.
All right. So basically, exactly. So what I was trying to say, that we don't have a clear scientific outcome in mind, but exactly we're trying to offer the computational facilities for broader community of scientists. So, but yeah, okay. If you think it's a good case study, we will try to apply for that. And then one more question related to applying. So for how long will be the funding? So if we apply, for example, so what we essentially need is a Kubernetes cluster where we can host our platform. And then for how long can we apply?
So one of the things that the OCRE project runs until the end of 2021, and we will get an extension to the middle of 2022. But by that time, we need to have developed some really interesting case studies. So our frameworks come into being in December this year. What we'd like projects to be able to consume resources and provide feedback on those resources in the kind of first 9 to 12 months of like 2021. So in 2021, we need the projects to be consuming these resources in a way that is giving them outcomes that we can use in our case study. So that's kind of the timing restriction is we do need you to consume the resources in time for us to develop case studies before our project ends, because that then becomes the legacy for the broader European Open Science Cloud. These case studies will be used to continue to drive the adoption of commercial digital services.
All right, that was clear.
And obviously, your project proposal would be strengthened if you can point to a high degree of certainty that your platform will actually be used by some compelling usage.
Well, we have already a couple of examples, let's say, from a couple of institutes in Switzerland that they use this platform, and it indeed helps to accelerate the research.
Yeah. So if in your proposal you can point to something like, well, we have these researchers or research projects that have committed to using the platform in that period, and for that we would like that would really make your proposal interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So we have already a couple of cases in Switzerland. Now we are kind of moving to China as well. So there are groups that are starting to use IDLab. And yeah, essentially the goal for us would be to expand the usage of the platform. And if OCRE can help us, that would be really beneficial. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Alexander. Next, we have Martin Brand. Martin, please introduce yourself. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm Martin Brandt. I'm from the Netherlands and I work at the Dutch NREN. Well, SURF is not only an NLM, but also a research support organization, ICT support organization for the institute in the Netherlands. And from that comes my question. At SURF, we have a lot of innovation projects, helping institutions get to the cloud or share their data or fair data. At the moment for this call, are you looking at projects from researchers, or can they also be projects led by members of an NLM?
So, as we said, I mean, we are looking for projects from researchers, and what we're looking to do is drive the adoption of cloud services. So what we want at the end of a project is a case study that allows us to present on a case study where digital services really helped the research community achieve a certain outcome. Or what we're trying to do is we're trying to display the benefits of using commercial commodity cloud services, some related platform services in research. So if you think that your project as SURF, contributes in a really big way to the future of research, then that needs to be clearly defined. Because as I say, our project ambitions are, and that's going to drive the decision-making around, what projects get awarded, need to clearly illustrate the benefits commercial digital services brought to a research project.
So we really have to, our project could be a tool, but the applicant, the person who wants the resources should really be the researcher. And he says, well, I have a project and I use the NRN tool to get to the cloud, and but it should be really researcher focused.
Yeah, so for example, if a researcher in the Netherlands was consuming a platform via SURF, for example, through SURF Cumulus, or like a more bespoke or more specific platform, and they were consuming that platform through SURF, and they needed to be able to pay for the platform to consume the service to enhance their research, then I mean, certainly that's a clear case for commercial services and support of research enhancement. But yeah, we are really looking for researchers to be able to tell these stories.
Okay. Yeah, but obviously, from a practical point of view, it doesn't really matter that much who submits the proposal, as long as it is very clear that the resources are used in a research context, right? So what we don't want is an entity like SURF rocking up with a proposal that says, we want to build this platform, we'd like to use the OCRE funding to make things available for free, and we fully trust that there will be researchers that will use this platform. So
no, we have
that's stupid, right?
We have researchers on the platform, but and they can access cloud through our platform, but it would be nice if they could use the OCRE funding to do their research through our platform, so to speak. Because I think but that's too much detail for now. Okay.
No, that sounds like a viable approach.
But I do think so. So one of the OCRE ambitions is to get the research community working more closely with their national research and education network in country. So if, for example, SURF was to work with one of the research institutes in the Netherlands and help them put together a proposal for consuming digital services through the NREN, with like really interesting research outcomes that would clearly demonstrate the consumption of those services, that, we are trying to broker relationships between the NRENs and the researchers. So, where the NRENs can participate in that way, that would be a very interesting opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. And if you then have a platform that uses a chunk of OCRE funding to do something useful, then obviously the chances for continued adoption increase, because that platform is kind of like the man in the middle that makes things easier to use.
Yeah, and if our platform is used more, then we also get more funding and usage out of it. Okay, and who is the contact person in the Netherlands? Because you said for the Netherlands it was a special case to get to enter the call.
That would be your colleague Michel Wetz,
Thanks.
who has the details on
But
He's not in the call because he's downstairs and at an event I am at.
Yeah,
but I will talk to him in a few minutes then. Thank you.
But just to be clear, Michelle has nothing to do with this funding call. You would actually submit your proposal online. Your proposal would be looked at by the funding team, which is a completely separate team, and the external advisory board, which is completely external and checks all of the boxes in terms of transparency and fairness and all of that kind of stuff. You know, Michelle will be the guy who ultimately is responsible for the framework contracts in the Netherlands. But that's something different. That's framework.
But what Michel can help you with is explain to you what services you can put in your proposal and how it works with professional services in the Netherlands, because that's a bit of a special situation.
Okay, I will ask him.
Okay, thank you very much, Martin. We only have time for one question. However, if we're unable to take your questions today, please send us a message to funding@ocre-project.eu. The last question we have from Jelena Mijatovic. Jelena, the floor is now yours. Please introduce yourself and your organization.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jelena Mijatovic, and I'm a PhD candidate at University of Agder in Kristiansand, Norway. Could you please explain one more time what is the difference between wave 1 and wave 2? Thank you.
Okay, so wave 1 on the OCRE project was actually the procurement of vouchers for individual researchers. So, and they were distributed through CERN, through the Marie Curie Association, through Eurodoc. There were various channels that distributed these vouchers to researchers that had participated in the requirements gathering for OCRE services. So that they were commodity vouchers that were procured at a certain face value and distributed to researchers. There will be a part 2 where those commodity vouchers will be procured off of the OCRE framework contracts and distributed, and we'll be running with, and we do communicate. If you're interested in getting such a voucher, then you will be able to kind of respond and apply for a single cloud voucher for yourself as an individual researcher. Wave 2 requires that an institute or institution puts forward a project proposal, a research project proposal, where for the funding of digital services, which can be a whole host of different services. And what we would really like the institutes to do in support of their projects is to actually try and get an understanding of what commercial cloud and related services would support the project, try and get an idea of what those would cost, try and get an idea of how much would be consumed, you know, if you're talking storage, if you're talking, you know, hyperscale compute, you know, whatever the service is, we need to have an understanding of that. But it is project-based, so it's for a research project that we can have a case study on. And then wave 3 would be a buyer group or a lead buyer applying for 50% co-funding for those services for a collaborative project. But that we're only looking at in the next call.
Okay, thank you very much, David. Just one follow-up question. So this means if I'm, for example, an individual researcher, a researcher associated with the university, does that make me eligible to apply for the funds?
Sure, it does.
Yeah.
And the other main difference is obviously the amount of funding involved, right? So in the Wave 2 call, we expect to use much more funding per project than we used in the Wave 1 per research voucher.
Individual. Yes, that's great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Jelena. Okay, so that brings this webinar to a close. Just a reminder for everyone that the recordings and the slides will be available in the event page on the OCRE website before the end of today. Jan, David, thank you very much for speaking today. Do you have any last words for our attendees before we end?
No, just a reminder that each of you will be receiving an email with a link to the OCRE funding site and to the publication of this call. and then you'll see it disseminated more widely through other communications channels. But
okay, good. Any last messages from you, Jan?
Thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to see many proposals.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone. See you again in our next engagement activity.
guys,
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.